The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. You are tuned into Inspire FM 105.1 FM. Welcome to Mother's Planet, a show where there is always something to talk about in a productive and beneficial way. I'm your host, Neelam, and this morning my guest is Dr. Amina. I will get Dr. Amina to formally introduce herself a little later in the show. But first, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Oh, assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, alhamdulillah. Just recovering from a long bank holiday that was very short.
Yes, I know. I think the town has been celebrating the glorious victory of Luton Town Football Club winning. So I think that's actually set a lot of people off guard, and we don't even know where the weekend went. So did you participate or did you go to see the parade?
Yeah. Yesterday, we went down. We actually thought we had left it too late, and there was just so much kind of traffic and congestion getting into Bury Park. So we thought, oh, we're probably going to have just missed the bus by the time we walk down. Let's just walk into town. And then obviously the bus was delayed, but it was such a great atmosphere in St George's Square for even that extra kind of hour or so that we waited, and then to get to see kind of all the players come through on the bus, and everyone was just so happy and so just I think just happy to kind of be around together. It was so nice to see people from all backgrounds just enjoying the time together. It was a nice sunny day. And yeah, I think it was a perfect end to, I think this is our last bank holiday.
Yes.
We've had lots of bank holidays recently that I'm kind of like, when's the next one? But it was a really good kind of well-timed bank holiday celebration, really, wasn't it?
No, alhamdulillah. Yeah, I think it was I'm not a football fan, but the game that they played, I kept popping in and out of the room and watching it with my children. I'm outnumbered in my home because I have huge football fans in my house. My eldest daughter, who's 16, is a huge fan of football, and I thought she wouldn't be, but she loves football. She knows everything about football, so
Wow.
I'm outnumbered. And then her
So
and
I'm not quite like that, but I do like a kind of, if you're kind of like emotionally invested in it. So, this was Luton, it was such a big game. Or like if Egypt are playing in like the World Cup or the African Nations Cup, or England are playing in the World Cup, it's like, yeah, have to watch it all.
yeah.
But also when it goes to penalties, like I think even if you have no idea about football and you're not interested in it, like you get caught up in all of that kind of the last few minutes and then extra time. I always watch the extra time and the penalties, and you're kind of just holding on screaming.
Absolutely, and that's the time I'll actually take that break and sit down and watch it, because I think, okay, this is the gripping point of the game now. So yes, that's when I
It's history, isn't it?
Yes,
like when it gets to that point,
yes,
you're kind of like you're watching a piece of history, and things change for
absolutely, and especially with this match because it counted so much, and it's a real big thing for Luton Football Club to actually win this, because to now be in the Premier League, it's going to have a huge impact for the town, the investment that they're going to make for the town. So, to be part of that, I'm like, well, I think the first thing my son turned around and said to me is like, are you going to let me be a footballer now? Because he's like, parents don't let their children become footballers because they just think it's not really a career. So now that Luton's in the Premier League and we've got some hope of it going somewhere, would you let me be a footballer? And I was like, oh, I still have to think about it. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure.
Well, I mean, I think I would have put that back on him and said something like, are you good at football? Could you be a footballer? Is the biggest question. It's not going to be us, parents that stop our kids doing something. It's are you able to do it? And actually, I think there's a lot that we can learn from the team. So I took part last year in something called Fit Hatters, which was so they used to have two cohorts. I understand at the moment it's just a men's only cohort, but it was a free funded activity that took place on like Kenilworth Road in the grounds, and it was led by kind of instructors that worked with the team for just kind of fitness, either in a men's cohort or a women's cohort, and part of it was kind of theory behind kind of all of the good lifestyle things that we talk about, healthy eating, getting into a sleep routine, exercises, winding down, all of those kind of things. There was a session on kind of menopause and that, that for women. And then you got the active part where in a group you could kind of run around the pitch or do various exercises, and it was great. So actually, it's not just about turning up on the day and just kicking a ball. It's showing commitment and kind of time management and persistence, and it's been a long time coming, I think since 1992. Is that, I was 2 years old. I'm a lot older than 2 now. And I think those are the things to kind of take away from, because not just kids, but lots of people will kind of be thinking, well, what does this mean for me? What do I take away from this? And it's actually not just about the end product, it's about all of that hard work that you put to get to that point.
Absolutely. And I think now it's going to inspire the younger generation, because where my children's high school is, they've got a field at the back, and they actually see the Luton footballers come down and train at that site. So they'll be looking at, and now actually that means something to them, because we're part of something now. So them, it's not just looking at, oh, they're just training. Actually, they're training. Wow, that could be us one day. So it's actually, it's quite inspirational. So I'm looking forward to see the town improve, inshallah. And I think we'll have lots of budding footballs on the way as well. So I'm not, in my shows, I do like to talk about the weather and my garden, of course. The weather, it's been a bit of an odd one, but alhamdulillah, over the bank holiday it was nice, but it's been towards the end of the week, it's just not. I've put my jumpers back on because it's
been a bit cold today, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's not been great, so I've actually gone back for my jumper. But are you green fingered? Do you like gardening?
In short, no. And that's not through lack of want. Every year I'm like, oh, you know what, I really, really want to be able to grow things, and I have all these like images of me being this like really green fingered person that's very like in touch with the earth, that like grows my own fruit and vegetables and then uses it in cooking, which I also can't do, all of these things, and it just fails absolutely miserably. But I did try, and kind of I repotted quite maybe a month or so ago, no, maybe a bit longer, 2 months ago. I repotted all the plants in my house because I think it's just too much of a step to do things outside in the garden. So I'm like, if I do little bits and kind of get them started, and then maybe I can move them outside. And then we basically had a massive leak in our house that has taken, I think we're on to the 5th week of trying to sort it. So everything is just dark and dusty, and all my plants that I repotted and were fine dying. So so I think it's now going to be next year that I'm gonna, because I think I've missed the window now, like it's
doing it
end of
usually I go out and I venture out for those pre-made plants and flowers, and I put them in beds and pots just to give my garden a bit of life and color. But this year I don't know, I think over the years we've just accumulated so many different seeds and packets of flowers, so I thought, right, you know what, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to sow the seeds and actually just see where we go with them. So I can't take credit for it, because I did get my children to get all tuck in. Mashallah, I have 6, so I got them all tucked in, and they all had like a pot, and they all just I was watching, really. I think I was just telling them what to do. But my patience is running low now, because I keep going out, and even the children, they keep going out and saying, well, they haven't grown. And my youngest, who's 2, she thinks that they'll grow overnight. So trying to get her to understand the concept of of
To
something.
be honest, that is kind of like me, where I've planted it today. I will keep looking at it. And I'm like, why is nothing happening?
Yeah.
But also it's that kind of cycle. So I like with orchids, people always come around and they'll give me like an orchid,
Yeah.
and it will look nice, and then it will die. But I kept one before for 2 years.
Oh, well done you.
Oh, no, as in I just kept it and didn't give up on it. And it looked like it was literally about to die. It was all brown and shriveled up and horrible. And I think I was just lazy. It was just in my room on the windowsill where it was actually getting light, and every so often I give it some water so I didn't overwater it. And 2 years later, because I literally have a picture, it like rebloomed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So actually, I'm trying to kind of be patient. So maybe say that, tell your kids that actually it's not maybe straight away, but kind of over time, you'll see that kind of whole cycle, and it will come back to life eventually. So I do tend to hold on to kind of my dead plants for a bit longer, and kind of hope that they will do the same.
Oh yeah, I think I'm going to have to do something like that. I'll have to explain, but I am getting a bit impatient, and I think I might venture out to go and get these pre-made plants and just put a few out just to
just to give them a bit of confidence.
Yeah, just so they know that something will come through.
Something has happened.
Yes, I
But
think.
were they flowers or kind of fruit and veg?
Well, yeah, we've done a mixture this year. So we've done flowers, and then we had to get big pots because I wanted to grow carrots. Carrots grow
Okay.
really quickly, so I've
Okay.
done
Have
carrots.
they grown?
Yes, no, they haven't. 'Cause
Oh,
they will, but
they will. Yeah.
yeah, give us a couple of weeks, and we probably might start seeing them sprout. I think really I should have done something like coriander because coriander grows very quickly. So I should have done some coriander. I usually put them in little pots on my kitchen windowsill, and then I take them out and then plant them. But
Yeah.
I might just do that with the youngest, just so that she can see how quickly some.
There's something has happened.
Yeah.
To be honest, I did get a pre-made basil plant, and I
Oh,
put it out my kitchen window. And actually, that has survived and it's gone all over the place. But I kind of almost don't want to put it outside. One, because I know our soil and everything is a mess, and two, I don't particularly like basil that much. I don't really want a whole garden full of basil, and then I'm going to be stuck with what to do with it.
oh yeah, well, actually mint's quite nice. So but mint is one of those that if it just grows, it will continue growing. Because I remember my mum growing mint, and
Yeah.
it wouldn't stop because it was
Yep,
just
my mum grows mint.
yeah.
Every year she gives us little bits of mint, and she's like, grow it, you'll get lots of mint. And within 2-3 weeks, it's all dried up and died. And she's like, how are you killing mint?
Yeah. Oh no, yes, no,
But never mind.
no.
We try.
That's
That's what we do.
absolutely it. Yes. So, listeners, this morning's show is a pre-record show. So, unfortunately, I won't be taking in any messages. But inshallah, the show will be live as an audio on the Facebook page. So, any questions or comments that you do have, you can share it there. We have the usual ways of connecting to the show through the airwaves of via Inspire FM 105.1 FM, and also through TuneIn via the Inspire FM webpage, where you can also access it on your smartphones as well on the app. So you really don't have an excuse to miss the show. Now, in today's show, my guest and I will actually eventually get to the topic of discussion once we've moved away from my garden. Well, I guess it's all about a cycle as well. We're going to be talking about menstruation, and it's a situation that many women, well, actually all women, face at some point in their life, and some of us have it on at least a monthly basis. Every woman is different, and we all face different symptoms associated with this. And are we truly managing this correctly? Are there things that we could perhaps do to remedy the pain that we feel? And when should we be concerned? My guest, Dr. Amna, will be unveiling some of the concepts around menstruation and also getting us to know our bodies a bit better. And for women, what is available for us to manage pain and any discomfort associated with this menstruation as well. So before we begin, can I please get you to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Thank you. So, as you said, my name is Dr. Amna. I'm a GP here in Luton, and I work in a couple of different surgeries. And part of my role is that I fit coils and implants, which are two of the different types of longer acting contraception, which stops you getting pregnant and essentially affects your menstrual cycle. And I see, as a Muslim woman, I see lots and lots of people with various different period problems or just period concerns, really, not necessarily period problems. So what I kind of want to start off by saying is that we need to be talking about our periods more. They are, they are very, very natural. It's something that affects, the vast majority of women, and even the women, some women are unable to have periods or regular periods. That is still something that is affecting them with their period, because it may be that they are wanting to have a period or look into why they can't have periods. And we really need to be breaking down the barriers in terms of this shame that still sadly exists in our communities about talking about periods. And we have, so I also host the Inspire Health and Fitness show once a month. And we have had some shows talking about aspects of periods, so things like PCOS, irregular periods. So if you haven't had a listen to that, then please do that. Also, that's also linked on the Inspire FM Facebook page and my Instagram, which is at Dr. Amna GP.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that introduction as well. And absolutely, I was just going to ask you, as an Asian doctor yourself, menstruation. I studied coming from the South Asian community. I studied menstruation and as the fiqh of menstruation from an Islamic perspective, and there were so many things that I learned from that course that I realized were cultural, that I grew up thinking, oh, this isn't actually part of my faith, this isn't anything to do with Islam, this is just what we were led to think or believe or follow as a cultural thing. So I think you're right. I think myself, coming from a South Asian community, we do need to, and that's why I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and talk about this, because it's something we don't talk about, and it is still an embarrassing thing, and it is something that we could be suffering and we'll just shy away from it and just let ourselves suffer silently in pain. And it's, it's important that we address this. So I guess the first question I wanted to open.
If I can just say, so I think that's a really important point that you kind of started off with, because actually we have an obligation on ourselves to understand the Islamic rulings around periods. And actually, so you're from a South Asian background, my parents are Egyptian, so from an Arab background, and the issues are exactly the same. And, when I speak to people from, other different backgrounds, even kind of Eastern European backgrounds, sometimes they say, actually, we have the same kind of limitations of talking about periods at home. But actually, as Muslims, we need to know how, what are the rules around periods. And when you study it, and, usually it's male teachers, our ulama, our sheikhs are males, and they talk about it so openly and in, such a non-judgmental manner. And actually, that's really, really nice to see, because that is what it should be. These are things that are mentioned in Quran, in Hadith. There are some black and white rules. Yes, there are some things that are kind of a little bit more grey, but actually Islam wants us to be talking about these things and understanding those things and understanding our bodies, and that's really, really important. So I would say that's the first thing to kind of break down, that actually, even if you're doing it just from an Islamic perspective, to kind of gain knowledge and know how to kind of deal with things every single month for many, 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 many years. So some people will start having a period from kind of the age of 8, and the average age of menopause in this country, so when you've completed your periods and you no longer have periods, is around the age of 51. So quick maths, that's over 40 years of every single month, this may be something that affects you, and we don't talk about it, or we suffer in silence, or we don't know what's normal.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess, I wanted to ask, the opening question was, what I don't think there is really a normal menstrual cycle length. And does this vary? Is it, some people always talk about, oh, my cycle's really short, my cycle's really long. Is this all normal?
So I guess the average is to have a period every 28 days, which is every kind of month. I don't like talking about things in terms of it being normal, because then people get very hung up over those 28 days and say, oh my God, my period was late one day to this month. Well, was it actually late one day? Or should we actually, if you look at your period cycle and what is normal for you, that actually can be longer or shorter. So anything between kind of 23 days and 35 days, we would say is classed as normal, as long as you're having cycles on a regular basis. And if you're not having a period, or if you miss a period, then trying to figure out the reason why and keeping a track of your periods, and seeing, could I actually account for why this has happened this month? Or is this something that's happening on a regular basis, i.e. my periods are regularly irregular, and therefore I need to go and speak to somebody about it, and they can try and figure out why.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's quite a lot of apps now available, which are very helpful in helping us trying to understand. But is it important to track periods, other than the obvious of, oh, I need to be prepared, make sure I've got a sanitary towel with me just in case I'm not at home? But is it important?
Really, really important, because like I said, this is something that is happening to you every single month. You need to know when it's going to happen. You can't kind of be caught off guard. But also, how will you know that something is abnormal if you do not know what is normal for you?
Yes.
And most people, you will find, track things in some way. You kind of know when, if you're on contraception, when you change your contraception, or if you get your nails done, then you know that actually I go every 3 weeks, and if I leave it a little bit longer, or if you go for a wax or get your hair cut, then you think, oh, actually, okay, yeah, I can leave it 4 weeks, but I can push it to this. We track lots of things about our bodies. Why are periods any different? And then if something does go wrong, or it's not the normal for you, then you already have that data. So yes, being prepared can make a massive difference, but also it's not just about having a pad ready or knowing what you're going to wear. I remember, personally, I don't wear things like white. You don't want to be kind of caught off guard. But also a lot of people will have some symptoms leading up to their periods. So it may be that they find that their mood changes, their emotions, how they deal with people, or they can get cramps before their period that kind of get worse up until the first couple of days. Or if you're going away on a trip, or planning work, you don't want to do it that first day of your period, depending on what symptoms you get on the first day of your period. But also, if you are struggling with your periods for whatever reason, pain or cramps, or extreme mood changes, which can happen, and we should talk about a bit later on, then going to see your doctor, your GP, it's useful to have that information and say, well, actually, I have noticed that over the 5 days before my period, I feel like this. I'm constantly arguing with people. Or actually, I used to think it was around my period, but then when I'm tracking it, it actually persists beyond my period, which could make us think about different things. And it may be that you need more investigations to look into that. But also, it can allow everyone around you to also understand what is happening. So, it may be that before I used to kind of control my periods, before I knew these options were available, the first couple of days, I would just be in bed in so much pain. I wouldn't be able to eat. I wouldn't be able to get up. I would be feeling sick. And that's something that lots of people had. Where, if I didn't have pads, for example, and you know, some people only have men in their house. It may be that they have to go and buy you pads, or you know, consider that actually they need to be a little bit nicer to you in the couple of days before, or you know, if you need any, ibuprofen, you know, we should be nice anyway all the time. But you know, it's that awareness and understanding. And obviously, you know, we've just come out of Ramadan. We've talked about it a couple of times in different various Ramadan shows as well. But you know, knowing that there will be a few days in the month that you will not be fasting, and you may not be up to waking up anyway for suhoor, or making, you know, a massive meal and hosting on that day.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Amna. We are now actually going to head over to a short commercial break. I know the first half has gone super fast. I know, super fast. So listeners, we are just going to head over to a short commercial break. Stay tuned in to hear more about today's topic. But for now, go enjoy a short commercial break. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Mother's Planet. I'm your host Neelam, and joining me on the show today is Dr. Amina. Now, this morning we have been discussing, as well as gardening, we have actually been talking about menstruation and the symptoms associated with this. At the beginning of the first half of the show, we actually wanted to try and unveil some of the myths and the lack of discussion around the topic, I guess, in a way. We want more women to understand and be in tune with their body and know their menstrual cycle a bit better. Now, earlier in the break, just before the break, we were talking about tracking periods, and I asked Dr. Amina if it was important that we do track our periods. Actually, I think the question to ask is, when do we track the periods? Because lots of people don't actually know what the sign of a period is, and you know, at what point. So what would you advise here?
So I think you mentioned that there are lots of different apps, and it doesn't really matter which one you use. It doesn't matter if you keep a diary and you still like a pen and paper and just kind of writing things down, but everyone should be tracking their periods and know when their last period was. And when you're tracking your period, the first day of your period is the first day of your last bleed. So that would be when you start, and then you see how long the bleeding goes on for. And usually for most women, that will kind of be between 2 to 7 days. There are rules. We talked about it, you know, finding out about the fiqh of menstruation. You know, there are rules beyond if it goes beyond 10 days, what that means. But also then you want to think about how many days you having non-bleeding days. How many of those days are you maybe getting symptoms on that you think may be related to your period or to a period coming up? So cramping, mood related changes. Some people will get some cramping in the middle of their cycle, so mid-cycle pain or ovulation pain, and it's good to kind of just keep track of that. And then your next cycle as well will start again at that first day of your next bleed.
Yeah, and it's important to know that every month, like say for myself, I give my example as an example. I have an 8-day period, so I know that my period's, but on the 8th day I'm ready to say, okay, I've finished. That won't necessarily be the same for the following month. I could have a 6-day period, so that is normal, because women worry about this, saying, oh, but last month I was only 8 days and this month I'm only 6, but now I'm 7. You know, is this normal?
And that's why it's important to track your periods, and not just look at one isolated month, and see actually what's the pattern. If it's usually kind of between 6 and 8 days, you can kind of say, oh, actually in general it's about 7 days.
Yes.
And you know, then you can be a lot less concerned. If it suddenly goes from 1 or 2 days to 11 days, then that's a big difference. And if it's then doing that on a consistent basis, you want to be looking at, well, why have things changed, and do I need to see someone about it? And usually we would say kind of around 3 months, but obviously it depends on what the symptoms are that you're having, as to how quickly you seek help. And actually, for all period-related problems or issues, there are things that we can do and that we look into. So it is well worth speaking to your GP.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the question I wanted to ask is, what are the common symptoms associated with menstruation? Because, we've talked about cramps, and we said that this could be at the beginning, this could be even before your periods have started. So, generally, what are the common symptoms associated with it?
So pain is something that a lot of people fear, and that can be quite normal. And it can be, in the day or so leading up to your period, the first couple of days, and then it should get better. If you're having pain outside of that, where actually the pain starts with your period and it persists beyond the bleeding, then it may be a sign that there's something else going on. And again, we'd keep a track of that, and go and see your GP about that. But also it depends on your perception of pain. So I know that I have a 0 pain threshold. I do not tolerate pain well at all. But I also don't tolerate a lot of medications well. So it's knowing that combination means that I need to be ready to know when my period is coming, or can I do something to stop my period from coming if, for example, I have something important on that first couple of days, and what can I do about it? And there are lots and lots of different options that we can do for pain. So, and some of them range from being kind of really simple, and it depends on your personal preference as well. So some people don't want to be taking tablets every single month. Some people are happy with just knowing when their period will come. They'll have a bit of an easier day. They'll maybe take a day off work, or, if they're able to, if they want to. They'll just take it easy, but they'll use a hot water bottle. So heat is, really helpful. Things like ibuprofen, if you're able to take it over the counter after food, that may help. We can prescribe different things that are similar to kind of ibuprofen, that can help with pain if that's your only issue. But lots of people will suffer with different things in combination. So I used to have what I would class, and it really is the woman or the girl, I will also stress to say, because from as soon as you start getting a period, you are treated exactly the same as any other woman that has a period. So it's not that you're too young to have something to control your periods or manage your pain or stop your periods. You are managed exactly the same. So anyone who is having periods may tend to also have really heavy periods. So I used to have what I would class as really painful periods and really heavy periods. And again, that is heavy to the point where it's disturbing you. And sometimes it's just having that conversation and realizing, when I speak to some girls, they say, oh, I was given a period pack at school. We had a bit of a talk, and they gave me these, green one, the ones in a green packet. So I use them. But actually what happens is they flood, and, I had an accident. And actually, when you ask them, actually, those are normal size, quite thin pads. And asking, do you know that there are other different types of pads available? There are nighttime pads. There are, really heavy pads. There are things like tampons that some people may wish to use, especially if they're doing activities such as swimming. So how much is it affecting your life? Some people don't like certain types of pads. So again, the sooner that we have these conversations and see what else is available and finding something that suits you. And now those aren't the only options. So people are sometimes using 2 lots of things. So things like a menstrual cup, for example, which is reusable. This is Mother's Planet. We all care about our planet. And the amount of plastics that are in things like pads and how many you're getting through, and also their price. So all of those things are things to think about when it comes to your periods and your symptoms and how you choose to control them. And it may be, and again, we can prescribe lots of different things, hormonal things and non-hormonal options to limit both pain and bleeding. Or it may be that you choose that actually, you know what, I don't really need a period, and I don't want a period, and I don't like a period. So I don't want to have a period. And that is also okay if you do that in a safe way. So I get lots and lots of different questions when I fit kind of coils and implants. So do you mind if I just kind of go into that for a
because I mean,
for a
I wanted to mention the part where you just said that I don't like a period and don't want a period, because there are some contraception pills, there are some things that other than the coil that women can do to minimize the flow of their period as well. So I guess it's important to discuss this and to understand that it's safe, because I think we all think that no, periods are normal, and you know, you must have periods and you need to. I mean, I'll be honest with you, when I was young, I've always my whole life had heavy periods, and as a result it's made me anemic, so I've had to monitor my iron levels when I'm on my period. So this is another thing.
Exactly. And those are the symptoms. So it's recognizing that actually if you have a tendency towards anemia, if you know your diet is not great, you know, certain backgrounds will have a tendency towards it. You don't eat meat, or you don't like meat, or things like spinach that will build up your iron stores. So your iron is kind of a bit borderline. You don't really remember to take, you know, vitamins over the counter regularly. Every month, your iron will drop. You will feel more tired. You may feel dizzy. And you might not know why. You might just think, oh, well, I'm feeling dizzy. I don't know. But actually tracking your periods and realizing, actually, I'm feeling tired and dizzy around the time of my period, that's also a symptom.
Absolutely. And, you know, knowing that there's things out there to manage it. So you wanted to, I interrupted there when you were going to talk a bit about the implants and coil fittings that you do.
Well, it's more just about contraception, because there's a lot of misconceptions about stopping periods. So if somebody comes to see me in the surgery about their pain, there's a lot of questions that we need to ask. And we need to ask, you know, has this always been the case? And usually it is that people have suffered for years and years and years. Or is it that actually there's been that change that we talked about? And that's where kind of having that tracking is really, really helpful. And we could offer things that I said, you know, things like the ibuprofen or ibuprofen type things, or things to make your bleeding less. If you're saying actually it's not particularly painful, it's just really heavy and it's flooding, and you know, I've tried the super heavy tampons and I've done all of these things, but there are, you know, clots, and I don't want that. So if you're not wanting to conceive, or you're not wanting to conceive in the very near future, then depending on the rest of your medical history, we could give you something like the combined oral contraceptive pill. So, or we call it the pill, which is a contraception. It stops you getting pregnant, but you're not on it because of contraception, because you're out having sex. And a lot of people are scared of that. They're scared that somebody will see it and they will assume that that is what is happening. And it's, again, that having that conversation and being okay with saying, actually, you know, if this is a valid option for me, I could have that. And that can sometimes stop the bleeding completely. So we can tell people to have it what we call back to back, so without a break. So you won't get a period for a couple of months. And I have the same conversation when I fit things like the Mirena coil. So usually we would recommend those in women who have had a a child before, or are sexually active, but because it sits inside your womb and it keeps the lining of your womb really, really thin, one of the benefits is that a lot of people will have no bleeding at all, or they may just get very irregular spotting, or they may get kind of ongoing kind of spotting randomly, and we won't know which one that is, or which person you are, until we fit it. But people get really, really worried because they think about all of this bad blood that is building up inside of them, and they say, we must have a period. Well, actually, if we are actively giving you something to stop you having a period, to keep that lining of your womb really, really thin, there is nothing to shed every month. So actually, there is nothing there that is building up inside of you. And it's having those conversations. And I hear this bad blood a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Because I was going to say that, a lot of people think it's a natural process. So we need to have this, and this is again a cultural thing because we grew up saying that it's a rejection from the body. So whatever it is, just let it come out. So whenever I used to see clots, I used to think, oh, it's probably something really bad that's just come out of my body, and not knowing that actually these clots, and this is where I wanted to ask the next question about what is the signs of a heavy menstrual flow, and when should we start thinking that actually that clot or this much flow is not right, and I need to get some medical help on this. When's the right time?
So if you're losing clots of blood, so large amounts of blood, especially over a prolonged period of time, so if you're having a really long cycle, if you're bleeding for 10 days and a lot of it is really, really heavy, that's going to take that strain on your body that we've already talked about feeling faint, feeling really tired. Some people may collapse. That needs looking at. Why are you putting yourself through that? There are things that we can do to help. And like I said, there's non-hormonal and hormonal options for that, but it's knowing what is usual for you. Similarly, for kind of older women that are sexually active, that they just have that, they've never had that before in their life, and then all of a sudden they've got all these clots. Well, why has that happened? Is there any chance that you could have actually fallen pregnant? And this is a delayed period where you've essentially missed a period and you're having a miscarriage, and that's kind of clots or something related to that. But how will you know if you don't know when your last period was? And our lives are so busy. How many people are just going to remember off the top of their head that actually my period was on the 3rd or the 7th, unless some people it's always the 7th. So they know it's always the 7th, that's it. If it's later, I will remember. But usually, especially if you're a 28-day cycle and we have 30 days or 31 days, it's around a certain date. And that's where the apps can be really helpful, so that it can remind you that actually this may not be right.
Yeah. And I find that a lot of people now pairing up with other women and saying, okay, so we're in sync, so your period date is here, so we'll share the same period date. And I know that I do that with my sister, because me and my sister we share it. So I always say to her, have you come on your period? Okay, yep, that means I'm near enough. So my body...
So I don't have a medical reason for that, but it is something that lots of people say, and you kind of people think get when they're close to each other, they think they're period. But that's a good thing to kind of remind each other, if that's why you're doing it, and then realizing, oh well, I haven't come on my period this month. What is different? Could I be pregnant? Do I want to be pregnant? And sometimes having those kind of scares is a good thing to kind of make you think, oh well, actually I didn't want to become pregnant. What do I need to be doing about it? And what are my options?
Yes, absolutely.
Again, all confidential. Speak to your GP. And there are things that either you can take every single day in terms of things like pills, or injections, or an implant in your arm that can last for 3 years, different types of coils that can last kind of 5 years or longer, 10 years even. And again, there's the non-hormonal coil as well that we've not talked about, the copper coil, which one can be used for emergency contraception if you need it. And again, not if you don't know that that's an option, you may not seek help until it's too late.
Yeah.
But also knowing what your period is like as normal for you means that we can properly discuss with you the risks and benefits of having a hormonal coil or a non-hormonal coil. So some people want a non-hormonal option, but actually there is the risk of having heavier and more painful bleeds. If somebody offered that to me, I would say, no way, I don't even want to take the risk that it may cause heavier bleeding.
Yes, absolutely. So again, it's understanding that. So just going back to menstrual irregularities, got to try and say that word correctly, it's a bit of a tongue twister, that word. Missed periods or not having a period for a long time, there's pros and cons to this. I mean, some people really worry. I mean, if you're not sexually active and there's no reason for you to have a missed period. When is the alarm bells that, when should someone start worrying that, okay, I'm actually having irregular periods? Is this common? Because I know that a lot of teenage girls have a lot of irregular periods. When's it normal? When's it not normal? What the contributing factors around this as well?
So when a girl will start having her periods, it is usual for them to have irregular periods. But again, we would track those, we would keep an eye, and we would encourage you to see that actually they are becoming more regular and there's more of a pattern that is happening. Usually for kind of older girls, we recognize different things, or the periods are not coming on a regular basis. And we would need to look into that. We would say give it at least a couple of months. So usually at 3 months, and at three months, we would certainly be doing investigations, things like blood tests, be asking you if you have any other symptoms. So like I said earlier, we've already done a show on polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is very common and can present with things like an increase, a high BMI, insulin resistance, so being diagnosed with things like diabetes or pre-diabetes, excessive hair growth, and especially looking at if there is a change towards that is important. But also it could be things related to your thyroid, for example, that can cause, lighter bleeds. So the other way, we've been talking a lot about, if it becomes heavier or not there, but actually, what if it's suddenly a lot lighter and actually you're only bleeding for 1 day? That could be a sign that other things are going on. And again, just tracking that and going to see somebody about it.
So, I mean, what would you say could commonly for a teenage girl, what are there common factors that could be contributing towards irregular periods?
We also forget about just the I want to say non-medical things, but things like stress can cause a massive impact on your period. Your diet, if you've been really sick, if you've taken certain medications, lots and lots and lots of different things. So do speak to somebody about it. Having really low body weight and really high body weight as well can affect your periods. So have a think about what's been happening the last few months. Have you been eating as much as normal? Have you suddenly lost a huge amount of weight? Are you suddenly exercising, a few hours a day, which, we would not recommend. And for parents, to be aware of these things, what is the change? And are there different changes? So when I talk about things like thyroid problems, for example, that can affect your mood, that can affect your hair, that can affect how tired you are. That can all be affected by it, and keeping that kind of symptoms in combination with your periods is really important.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess you mentioned earlier sometimes any change in the
Have we frozen?
I was just going to say you froze there, so there were some things that did or didn't come through. But you mentioned something about a change in lifestyle, so things like exercise. Now, exercise has affected the regularity of periods. Is this normal? Is it normal that someone trying to get fit hasn't had a period for that month, or 6 weeks later and they still haven't had a period? Are these normal things?
So I wouldn't want to say it is normal, because the take home that I want from this is know what is normal for you. And if there has been a change, discussing it with somebody to say, is this a reasonable change? Is it not a reasonable change? What has happened?
Assalamu alaikum, and apologies, listeners, for the interruption on the show there. It appears that Dr. Amina has actually lost her internet connection, so we were unable to complete the show fully. But we are actually now heading over towards the end of the show, and I do want to thank my guest, Dr. Amna, for all her time and input in today's show. There's been some great advice around menstruation and the things that we have out there to help us through this. So women, don't suffer in silence, I think, is the take-home message. There is lots of support out there and a lot of literature around this as well. So I think it's time that we engage with our bodies and listen to our needs as well, and reach out for support in whatever aspect of menstruation is needed. So thank you again for Dr. Amna for all her input and advice. And I have no doubt that listeners were able to take something positive and beneficial from the show, inshallah. And thank you for the listeners for tuning in. Inshallah, in the upcoming weeks, I will be doing some fiqh of menstruation topics where I have studied this. So I will be looking at sharing some of my knowledge with you through the study courses that I have done. So do keep an eye out on that. There will be some banners and adverts going out on the Inspire FM Facebook page. So do keep your eyes on a lookout for that. For now, I just want to share my quote for the day. A strong woman knows she has strength enough for the journey, but a woman of strength knows it is the journey where she will become strong. Jummah Mubarak to everybody tuned in this morning. Have a blessed Friday, and make sure you get that sun factor out for the weekend, because we are in for a heat wave. So lots of sun protection over the weekend, and keep hydrated. Assalamu alaikum. Jummah Mubarak.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.